probably
Okay.
join us in progress. All right, so Tom, are we now all set?
You are.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the May 5th regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, may I get you to call a roll, please?
Mayor Rilling, Mr. Abrams,
Here?
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Gilleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis,
Here.
Miss Yang.
Here.
We have 6 commissioners at 6:32.
All right.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda for today is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. May I get somebody to move
I'll
that
move it.
discussion? Thank you, Artie. Any changes, amendments, updates to the minutes as presented in our package?
Just one quick one. My last name has an S at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's just misspelled throughout.
Okay, we will make sure that that gets corrected. Similarly, second sentence under the roll call, my name has no H in it. So that needs to be changed as well. Any other changes, amendments, revisions to the minutes?
Yeah, Ed, Destroy. I just have one on page, I guess it's page 9. In the middle, top paragraph is just when I asked about the AAA rating. I think I was directing that question to Jarrett, not to Tom Ellis. So I would just change that to Jarrett.
Okay, very good.
And Artie, just to be clear, there's one S, yeah, as it is on Zoom, one S at the
Yes.
end, not 2, right?
Correct.
2 S's in the middle, 1 S at the end. Got it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Can
yeah.
you please send the link to the mayor, Tom?
All right, well, Tom sends the link to the mayor. Any other changes, revisions, etc. to the minutes from last meeting? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved. Next on our agenda, moving to page 13 of our package, is transfers for this particular month. Tom, do you want to walk us first before I ask you to walk us through them? Can I get somebody to please move them? Thank you, Artie. They are moved for discussion and approval. Tom, do you want to walk through the transfers?
Yes, so a handful of departments on tap for tonight. The first one is from City Clerk, and we actually have Irene here to talk to these, mostly on office supplies and the advertisements in the Norwalk Hour front. So go ahead, Irene.
Yes. Yeah, those are for legal notices that we have to publish by law and changes to the ordinance. Every time we make a change, then there's a charge that we incur. So those are a result of ordinance and legal notices.
Okay, and that's inside the city clerk department. That's just from one budget line item to the next, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right, very good. Let me interrupt for 1 minute to show that at 6:35 p.m. the mayor joined the meeting, just for the minutes, please. Okay. Any questions to Irene around the transfers from the city clerk's office? Okay, thank you, Irene. If the board agrees, I'm going to ask that we approve all of the transfers in bulk. Okay, so Tom, do we want to go to the health department?
Yes, we've seen this one a few times over the last 1+ years. This is Deanna with the health department. Looks primarily from contingency related to some recent fires, and then a little part-time, full-time to part-time transfers. So Deanna, I think I saw your name on the list. There you are. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Board of Estimate Taxation members. So as Tom described, there are 2 transfer requests from contingency. One is to support our relocation services, and the others are to support services related to evictions that the city will pay for storage, and moving fees and auction and dumping fees related to people's from people who are evicted. And the relocation costs, as you know, in the past, we've had to come to the BET towards the end of the fiscal year or during the fiscal year as costs have increased. So this is to get us towards the end of the fiscal year to be able to fund all of the expenses. And then the third transfer request is we've had a vacancy in one of our full-time positions in environmental health. And we've been able to have someone part-time support us in covering some of the mandated services. And so it's requesting to be able to fund them through the end of the year from the full-time line to the part-time. And we're close to filling that vacancy, but we haven't filled it. We haven't filled it yet.
Thank you. Questions for Deanna about any of these transfers?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
just real quick, I'm curious on how we put something from contingency to grants.
Well,
So
it's not, it's not really a grant.
Okay,
I think what you're thinking is like the Harbor Commission, probate court. It's not that type of thing. It's just the way, this is a regular account within the operating budget
Okay.
under Deanna's jurisdiction. It's just labeled that way. I don't know.
okay, just curious.
Yeah, don't know the
Thanks.
history
Yeah.
behind it, but
Thanks for explaining.
If I can add, this has caused
Yep.
confusion in the past, and so the BET has suggested we change the line item. So for next fiscal year, it's going to be, the funding is in eviction services. So there's that clarification.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Troy, I believe you had a question?
Yeah, I've asked this question every year when I see this come up. Are we going back to the owner on these when we're asking relocation expenses? Are we going back to the owner of the property or their insurance to reimburse the city for these expenses?
That's another great question. We do whenever we can. We have to follow the state law. And so we're able to recover some costs if it's, if it's the fault of the landlord, but if it's, a fire or something that is deemed not, or if it's something that's outside of their control, we are unable to go to the owner for the cost. So whenever the law allows us to do it, we do go and seek the recovery of those costs.
Yeah, because I mean, all properties have to have insurance, right? I mean, why, if there's a fire, the insurance company pays for the damage or the relocation for the tenants, no?
We're only able to for $4,000 per unit as what's defined in state law. That's what we're able to do.
Well, I would try to pursue the owners of the property to see if we can get reimbursed for these situations. I've asked for this in the past, and it sounds like we're still not really doing it.
We have in the past, put liens on properties, and we have worked really closely with the law department to pursue what we're able to.
So Deanna, to Troy's point then, if you could just in an email or some simple written form, communicate back to the board here, what are the limitations? What are the avenues we've pursued? Just so we have a full understanding and don't seem to be talking past one another, that would be appreciated.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Can I interject for a second? I'm on the Charter Revision Commission and they're short one person for a quorum. I'd like to obviously participate in this thing, but the Charter Revision is in its last I guess the stages. And so I apologize. I'm going to excuse myself from this meeting, but if I should be needed for whatever reason, I'm happy to come back on. I just need to go on the Charter Revision Commission right now.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Deanna, one last question from me. On the transfer for condemnations, etc. Does this reflect the most recent unfortunate situations that have happened in Norwalk? The recent, I believe, is a fire and forced evictions on Taylor Ave of 22 people or something. Is this up to date, or are we going to expect to see you again next month because trailing 30 days of additional expense?
We did submit this request last Wednesday when we did know of the fire. So we did put in an additional amount in the transfer to put that into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Deanna,
additional questions for Deanna?
yeah, I've got one comment, Ed, or question, I should say. Deanna, I noticed on, this morning that there was an incident, at the Clock Tower condos. I guess that impacted 2 first-floor units. Will there be an expense associated with that, or too soon to tell?
Too soon to tell. I did ask our program director about that earlier a few hours ago. No one has come forth to us yet, but they might.
Like, yeah, okay.
Right. Thank you. Any additional questions for Deanna? Seeing none, thank you, Deanna. Tom, shall we move to the police department?
Yes, so this is the final department of the evening in terms of the transfers. So as we've seen in years past, some transfers will be trickling in over the next couple months through the fiscal year to clean up some ups and downs throughout their department. They have by far the most amount of lines on the budget between all of their departments, but we have Mickey here to discuss, as well as Deputy Chief Melissa Lepore.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tom. Tom summed that up very well. This is our annual reprioritization of funds, as everyone knows, with the amount of line items we have, and we budget so far in advance. Sometimes we sort of got to change on the fly. So the excess funds that you see, or the surpluses, are a result of just the redirection of needs and spending cutbacks and so on and so forth. So it's usually a 3-part process: April, May, and June. I might be back next month. I most likely will, with a smaller set of transfers. There are also some smaller transfers. We like to see no red on our balance sheet. So we like to have everything, even if we have little minor deficits, we like to sort of get them out of the way so everyone can see exactly what we have. And it's not one of those things at the end of the year where there's X amount of dollars in the red and the rest is in the black, and you got to clear the red before you can see what you have left. So once again, just for some more immediate needs rather than stuff, we delayed some other spending on things we felt we had to reprioritize, and that's really about it.
Questions for Mickey? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the transfers as presented in our package this evening, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the transfers are approved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, Tom, I believe next we move to page 20 in our package, the resolution for the capital budget. Before I move this for discussion, clarification on this, because we did make a recommendation that was different from this. I believe at this stage, our only authority is to approve the capital appropriation, not to make any amendments, changes, or revisions to it. Is that correct before I move this for discussion?
Yes, that's correct. So the Common Council already completed the last and final step where any changes could have taken place in April. But I will bring to your attention, and I'm not sure if you saw it on the bottom of the first page of the agenda, before the resolution is the presentation from Bill Lindsay on our
I'm
debt load.
sorry,
Yeah,
I did miss that. I apologize. So we will move to Bill then. And since that's just a presentation, we don't need to move that. There's no vote on what Bill is presenting, correct?
correct.
Bill, the floor is
Yeah, well, we have Bill on the line, and he's for those that don't recall, he is our bond advisor, has been for quite some time now, and has put together a package with updates on what we're asking for and where we are in terms of debt limits and thresholds amongst the rating agencies. So take it away, Bill. Let me know if you need me to share my screen.
Yeah, Tom, I think I may. I'm struggling to see how I do that on my end.
Okay,
I don't know if you have to grant me access or permission or what, but
let me try that real quick. I'll make you a co-host, see if that works. And if not, then I'll pop it up on mine. All right, give it a shot. Do you see anything that says, like, it would be at the bottom of the screen in a green square? Says share.
There we go. Yep, there do. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that now.
Not yet.
There we go.
There it is.
There it is. Excellent. Okay. So, So again, good evening. My name is Bill Lindsay. I am the city's financial advisor for debt issuance. And so I was asked to come back and discuss, as Tom said, the current debt load of the city and how that relates to credit metrics and where, what the expectations are going forward based on the proposed capital budget. So with that, I will jump into the presentation. Really, what I wanted to just kind of review is the credit rating methodology, because again, it's a little bit counterintuitive because it is, we do go to the credit rating agencies for debt issuance, but debt is not the only factor that they consider. In fact, it's fairly low on the weightings that they do apply. So I wanted to review that with you all first, and then we can talk about the current debt position, where the city is with its authorized but unissued debt balances, and then talk about what the forward projections will look like. So first, in terms of the credit rating agencies, I think some of you have heard this from me before. Their purpose is really to evaluate the credit risk based on their independent methodologies. The city uses 2 of the 4 major credit rating agencies, so Moody's and Standard & Poor's, names that you're familiar with. The city does have their highest rating of AAA from both. Both Moody's and S&P use what they refer to as a scorecard rating now. So it's an attempt after the 2008-2009 credit crisis. They tried to provide more transparency into their rating process. And they did that through this scorecard where they apply weights to certain key factors that they look at. And then those inputs will roll up to an overall scorecard rating. And that from there, they'll get to what the headline rating that we're all familiar with. They refer to it as the indicative rating that comes out of the scorecard. That does get adjusted by a number of overriding factors, whether up or whether down, plus or minus, get to that final rating. And when I get to the slides with the rating methodology, I'll point those overriding factors or adjustments out to you all. So first, the Moody's, their scorecard, I like to focus on the Moody's scorecard because it tends to be provide the lower ratings, historically speaking. And so, if there's a concern about what future debt load will do to the city's overall credit rating, I think the weakness would come from the Moody's rating rather than the Standard & Poor's rating. So I'm going to start with that one. So here is a graphic from them. And on the left-hand side, you can see the 4 areas that they really focus on: economy, financial performance, what they refer to as institutional framework, and I'll explain that in a moment, and then leverage. You can see in the circles each of the weightings that those carry. Economy, financial performance, and leverage are all at equal weightings at 30%. And then institutional framework is 10%. So institutional framework is a single rating they give to all 169 municipalities in the state of Connecticut. It's really based on the statutory framework that the municipalities operate within. So here, Moody's applies a AA rating to Connecticut municipalities, in part because there is binding arbitration that exists and it is mandatory in the state. So they don't give it the highest rating, but they give it the second highest rating at AA. So that's the 10%, but then they get into equal weightings for the other 3: economy, financial performance, and leverage. If you keep moving to the right in the graphic, you can see the other certain key factors that make up those in each of those criteria. So for economy, it's resident income is 10%. Full value on a per capita basis, full value of the grand list, that is is 10%, and then economic growth is 10% here. Moody's is comparing the GDP of the MSA, which would be Bridgeport, Stanford MSA that the city is within, comparing that to changes in the national GDP. Under financial performance, they look at two metrics: available fund balance and then what they call liquidity ratio. So available fund balance is not just the general fund. It's important to keep in mind that they look at total governmental funds, and they include the enterprise funds in the internal service fund in that measurement. So not just the general fund here. That's a 20% weighting. And then liquidity ratio is, again, all the governmental funds, including the enterprise funds and the internal service funds, looking at the cash balances. And then finally, under leverage, so here it's important to understand that Moody's is applying an equal weighting to debt, pension, and OPEB. So each of those three really account about 10% weighting. So again, as I said, at the beginning, we think of the ratings in terms of debt issuance, but really debt only accounts for about 10% of the overall weighting. So it's a little counterintuitive. And I'll come back to that point again in a couple slides. But here they're measuring the amount of debt that's the amount of long-term liabilities, I should say, the city is outstanding. So the overall net pension levels, net OPEB levels, and then the overall debt load as 20%, and then the carrying cost within the budget. So debt service, annual debt service, annual pension contribution, annual OPEB contribution, right, which the city is required by charter to make. Those three summing up as a percentage of the overall budgetary expenditures as their fixed cost ratio. And I'll have you note down at the bottom under notching factors here. These are those factors which would move the scorecard indicated rating whether up or down. The one that is, I think significant for this conversation is that potential significant change in leverage. So if there were material changes in the city's debt projection going forward, or projections to the pension and OPEB, if additional benefits were granted to employees, let's say, those things they could take in and make into consideration and make an adjustment kind of below the line to the overall scorecard rating. So now then, as I said, Moody's is applying equal weighting to debt, pension, and OPEB under that leverage category. It is important to keep in mind that even though we're having a discussion about the debt and the debt load and what the current capital budget is incorporating, that is relatively a small consideration in the overall credit rating process, right? And because the city's historically has well-funded pension and OPEB plans, those are positives within the methodology, and so those positives will allow the city to take on a little more debt, maybe say, than some of its other peers who aren't as well funded in their pension and OPEB. I'll also point out that, and we'll show you the Moody's scorecard in a minute, that the city is currently at a AA rating for financial performance if we blend the two metrics that they look at. And keep in mind that financial performance is 30% of the overall weighting. So whereas debt only represents 10%, financial performance is 30%, right? And that's what is more likely to move the rating downward, because obviously it can't go upward at AAA, is really that financial performance at 30%. The city has scored well here historically due to its conservative budgeting practices, and as well as the strong reserve levels that it maintains both within the general fund and outside the general fund. Because again, here Moody's under financial performance is not just looking at the operating fund. They're looking at total governmental funds, and they do include internal service fund and the enterprise funds in their analysis. So here, what I've given you, this is the actual scorecard from Moody's from back last August, the most recent conversation we've had with them. And you can see on the left-hand side, those are the metrics that we talked about, the major categories: economy, financial performance, leverage, and then notching factors, which I mentioned. You can see the actual scores and then the weights, but I draw your attention to the actual score on the far right-hand side. So again, in order to get to a AAA rating, we don't need to score AAA at every single metric. There are certain metrics that are going to fall below that, and then others that are going to be at AAA. Just to focus on a few that are not at AAA. The one that jumps out at you, economic growth metric at a single A, it's a negative number. Again, they're comparing the Stanford Bridgeport GDP to national GDP, which unfortunately Connecticut historically has lagged in national, or recently I should say, has lagged in national GDP. It's not my favorite metric, to be quite honest with you. I don't really think that that's the best measure, but that's the one that Moody's is elected to use. And so here, that is a weakness that needs to be offset by other strengths within the scorecard. And those tend to fall in terms of the full value per capita number, which is extremely high, as well as liquidity ratio, which would really be the cash balances. And then that fixed cost ratio under leverage, the amount that the city budgets annually for a combination of debt service, pension contribution, OPEB contribution. Here again, the well-funded pension and OPEB plans are meaning that the city does not have a large contribution on an annual basis because of the high funding levels. So those end up being positives here that offset some of the other weaknesses. The other one that I would draw your attention to is that available fund balance at 25%. So that falls out as a AA score here. That's actually the lower bound of the AA score. So if there was to be weakness going forward in the fund balance levels, that would potentially drop that from a AA score to a single A score. And that may be one of the areas that could potentially be pressure on the rating.
Excuse me, may I ask a question, or should we wait till the end?
I'm fine if you want to ask questions as we go.
Could you, so if you were to say what the measure is, if to get a score of AAA on the right-hand column, and these measurements are the city as of August 2024, what's the actual benchmark level at the AAA level? So what would it be on resident income ratio, available fund balance, and so on and so forth?
So yeah, I'll go through them. There's a number of them here, so you have to bear with me, but I'm going through the methodology. So under the resident income, it's great. It's 120%. Greater than 120% would be the AAA score. So the city is right at the upper bound for the AA score. So again, continued improvement in resident income would push you into that AAA score. So that's certainly a positive. As I mentioned, full value per capita is one of the largest strengths. So here they stopped measuring at $180,000 per capita. So at 300,000, the city is almost twice, right? What the upper bound there is. And so you don't get extra credit for exceeding it, but you've got quite a bit for that if that were to drop for some reason. So that is one of the single strongest measurements that they have. The economic growth, again, this is not my favorite metric. Here, it's anywhere from 0 to -1% would be greater than 0 is the AAA. So that you need to be positive at or above the national GDP levels to be positive. For the AA, if you go to the next category, that's 0 to -1. At -2.5, again, the city is on the lower bound of the A score. So, unfortunately, there's not much that the city can do to control this metric. And it's not the Bureau of Economic Analysis that produces the numbers that Moody's uses does not provide granularity down to the city. It's the MSA. So again, it's not my favorite metric for them to use, but to answer your question, it should be a positive number if you're going to score AAA there. Moving on to available fund balance. So here, greater than 35% would be AAA levels. And it's important to bear in mind, that's not just the general fund, okay? So they're not telling you need to have a 35% fund balance. There's very few, if any, people in Connecticut who have 35% fund balance in their operating fund. This is the combination of all of the governmental funds, plus the enterprise fund, plus the internal service fund. So you can see where, again, if you have an enterprise fund for WPCA like the city does, that is, and those tend to be capital heavy operations, oftentimes you'll see larger reserve levels built up over time, right? Because understanding that they are capital intensive operations, those where tend to drive these numbers higher. So it just, the takeaway here is not just the operating fund. For liquidity ratio, where you're at 54%, anything over 40 would be the AAA score. Again, institutional framework isn't a numeric. It's more of a qualitative than a quantitative measure. So there's not a range that I could give you on that. But looking at the two leverage numbers, less than 100% for long-term liability ratio. Again, this is comparing that leverage, debt, pension liability, OPEB liability to revenue. Okay. 100, less than 100% would be AAA. And then finally, fixed cost ratio, that's the carrying charge for the combination of pension, OPEB, and debt. Less than 10% is the AAA benchmark.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's where the city is in the scorecard for Moody's. You'll notice that based on based on the August 24 numbers or metrics, and again, because the most recent audit, when we had the conversation with Moody's last fall, the most recently completed audit was the 23 audit. Those are the metrics that they're using. I don't foresee much change or any change or downward pressure based on the 24 numbers here. But based on Moody's methodology, this scorecard indicated outcome was a AA2 rating. And then Moody's made some below the line adjustments to get to the AAA rating. And the quote that we put in here is, again, it's kind of in the language of the rating agencies. It's not particularly clear, but what they're talking about here is that the nominal strength in the city's reserves. So what they're trying to say is the understanding that Connecticut reserves tend to lag the national medians because Connecticut municipalities rely on property taxes primarily as their major revenue source, and property taxes are more stable and less subject to change during down cycles, economic down cycles, than say sales tax would be. So they tend to give Connecticut municipalities a bit of a bump here in that below the line adjustment because they understand there's a stable revenue stream that's coming in through the property tax. And so they make an adjustment to say, okay, even though you may score AA on the scorecard that they use nationally, we understand that the local Connecticut history is different, and they make some adjustments there, which is why it gets up to AAA. Right, but I think the takeaway I want you to take from here is, this is credit rating conversation in relation to the capital budget, but the capital budget is not the primary driver of the credit rating. Okay, and I think that's the important takeaway as we move through this discussion. So that's Moody's, right? Again, we're focusing on Moody's because Moody's tends to provide the weaker outcomes of the two, the lower ratings of the two. But the city does also speak to Standard & Poor's, uses Standard & Poor's, so we'll look at just the Standard & Poor's rating. Here, the graphic from Standard & Poor's, you want to look at the second band on the top, where it says local government. And again, across the top here in terms of the weighting. So here, economy is 20% for S&P, which is 10% lower than Moody's. Financial performance is also 20%. Again, Moody's is at 30, so a little less of a weighting here. Reserves and liquidity is 20%. So Standard & Poor's is breaking out financial performance to meaning financial performance metric or bucket, if you will, is revenues to expenditures, how you end the year, but then reserves and liquidity is a separate measurement. So if you sum those two for finances, it's 40, obviously, which is a bit of a shift upward than what Moody's uses. Under the management heading, Standard & Poor's is at 20% versus Moody's at more 10% for that for their metric, and then debt and liabilities at 20% for S&P versus 30% for Moody's. And within that box, under the bold heading of local government, you can see the actual metrics that they're measuring. All right, so those are the two scorecards, and I wanted to provide those to you just to kind of as a background to understand where where the city's at and how the credit rating agencies derive what their ultimate headline rating is. So now as we kind of shift gears and focus more specifically on the debt, again, it's 10% of the overall weighting, but we're having a conversation in relation to the approval of the capital budget. So here, looking at Moody's criteria, the measurement that we're going to focus on is principal only, first off. Second of all, it's total citywide debt. So it's not just the general fund debt for the city and the Board of Ed. They are considering the WPCA and parking authority debt as well, because the city is issuing debt for those two enterprises as general obligation debt. They will make a below the line adjustment for the fact that both of those enterprises are self-supporting, but at their onset, they're considering all of the debt equal because it's all general obligation debt of the city. So total debt load as June 30 of 25 is going to be 459 million. The principal payments for all of the debt in 24-25 current fiscal year was 31.6 million. 25-26, that's increasing slightly to 33.1 million.
Hey, Bill, just
Yes.
real quick, that 459, that's inclusive of the previous debt load plus the 74 and change that we're talking about tonight. Is that correct?
No,
No, that's just the actual existing debt.
Okay. Oh, never mind. I was taking a different approach. I know what you're referring to, the debt schedule with the next 30 years of payments. I got you.
Yes, exactly. So here, with that $459 million number, that in relation to what we calculated last year at this time to be the debt capacity, if you will, that threshold that once the city were to exceed, which could potentially start to put pressure on the rating, that was based on Moody's methodology when they published it in the fall of 2023. So here, the number is 650 million. It isn't materially changing upward or downward based on the 24 audited numbers here. It's still, that number still holds. So, again, you're below it right now, but it's important to keep in mind that there is currently, excuse me, certain debt that was previously authorized that has yet to be issued, which we referred to as authorized but unissued debt. It's roughly $114 million, which includes a small portion of the South Norwalk Neighborhood School and as well as monies from Norwalk High School that have already been approved yet to be issued. So we need to keep that in mind, that the debt load, that the 459 million is debt that's actually been issued, and there's more debt that's waiting in the wings to potentially be issued. Right, so just to focus on that authorized but unissued debt for a moment. So what we did is we broke out here for you which of the prior capital budgets that are and what those balances look like. So obviously the more recent ones have the higher balances of yet to be issued. There is some smaller amounts from older capital budgets going back to 2017 that are still out there, but really significantly, it's like the last three capital budgets that do have some balances that are yet to be issued going forward. So here, this is really the what we're building up to in the presentation here. This is the forward kind of debt waterfall of where the overall capacity is going based on the proposed capital, the 5-year capital plan, and how it relates to that debt capacity threshold of 650 million. So again, by fiscal year, you can see the starting balance to 459 million we mentioned. we took that 114 million, if you round off, and we amortized it over a 5-year period, evenly, straight line amortization, and then we added in the new capital that's being proposed. We subtracted from that what the current, what the upcoming principal payments are, come up with an ending balance, and then showed you the variance. So you can see, as we move through time, the city is expected to exceed the $650 million debt threshold number, beginning in 2029. We had to make some assumptions, 31 in fiscal year ending 31 and 32, with regard to what that capital budget might be. Again, it's beyond the 5-year capital, the 5-year plan, obviously. So we kept it flat based on the final year of the 5-year plan. And the city it would, at this pace, exceed that $650 million threshold. But I think it's important to point out two things. One, historically speaking, the full amount of the capital budget has not been expended or borrowed for in the first year that it's authorized. That's why the city has authorized but an issued balance, right? If it had issued all of the debt that was approved in year 1, there wouldn't be an outstanding balance. And if you look back for a second at the prior slide, there are some significant balance in the 2 most recent years. And so the idea that the city would would issue all of the debt in each of the years of the capital plan as they're proposed is probably not a reasonable expectation. But, again, if that were to happen, we would exceed it. The city would exceed the $650 million threshold. So the second thing is, though, these numbers have improved over when we had this conversation a year ago. So a year ago, the city was projected to exceed the 650 million threshold in 2027. And by the time, at the end of the 7-year horizon we're looking at here, it was expected to exceed it by 200 million. So it's up over $850 million. It's come down significantly by about 100 million. And that was in large part to the reductions that are in the 5-year capital plan, obviously, as well as the prior bond issue that the city had in August of 2024. A significant piece of the authorized but unissued debt was financed. And so there's less to amortize on a going forward basis. So again, yes, there would be some concern about exceeding that number, but I feel that based on city's prior practice, it's not going to be in 5 years, and it would maybe be in year 6 or 7 if it was going to exceed that number, and I don't expect it to exceed it by a material amount. So as I look at this, I again, it's something to be aware of, but I don't know that it's something to necessarily be concerned about, all other things being equal.
Question, Bill, can you talk about our debt issuance amounts last year and what you think we would go to market this year, and how this might compare historically in terms of the amounts that we've gone out to market to raise?
Yeah, so last year it ended up being, the notional amount was 75 million, which was on the higher side. If we went back a decade, the city had been issuing about 35 million a year. But with the school improvement program that the city's undertaken, it's increased, and it had been closer to 50 million the last few years. But it has been increasing. And I think part of the increase this past year was, as I said, financing a portion of the authorized but unissued from prior capital budget years. As to what the city may finance this year, I think it's a little early for that. There's a process that finance, and I think Alan has a big role in this, figures out what the spending is for, like, say, the next 12 months. And I don't know where the city is currently with that process, but it usually doesn't start in earnest until, I think, after the budgets are all adopted. And then the focus turns to that. So I think, and Tom can clarify or confirm, it may be a little early to answer that question.
Yeah, Bill, so, yeah, and for everyone else, what we're looking to authorize on the resolution coming up after this is 74.5 million. That does not mean we will go to the market for 74.5 million. I'll give you one example. In that list of approvals is a new ladder truck for the fire department, which is about $3 million. They won't have that ready for another 4 years, so that 3 million won't need to be bonded for another 3+ years at least. And what we will do, starting probably late May, early June, is go out to all the departments and do a cash flow estimate. So we go to all the departments, all the open and approved projects. We ask them to lay out the time frame of when they expect to make payments. So if a project isn't starting on July 1st, there's no reason to, or even in the coming fiscal year, fiscal 26, there's no reason to bond for it. So when we get all of those requests back, then we'll look at it in aggregate and then figure it out with Bill's assistance, how much we need to go out to the market for.
If I could ask a question, if we look at the ending balance here, does that reveal sort of the thoughts on issuance? So 598 minus 573, that's roughly 75 million. And then the following year, we're talking about 50 million. And then the following year, it would drop down to about 42. And then the subsequent year, 30. And then the other year, 13. And then the other year, 15. Is that one way to look at this? I mean, you would have projected potentially what you would have gone out to the market to determine the ending balance. Is that
So,
correct?
not exactly. I think your approach is sound in coming up with the net number, but we did not project what I'll call the actual borrowing amounts to be. We just said, based on the 5-year capital plan, this is what 2027 is. It's 87.5 million. We're going to assume worst case scenario when you borrow all of it in year 1, which has not been the city's practice, but in an effort to be conservative here, that's what we assumed. And that's how we approached it for the 5 years covered under the 5-year CIP.
Okay. With this year's issuance, will we have covered the majority of the costs for the schools, the upcoming schools, i.e. we will have the money to build those schools in the bank, so to speak?
I believe that to be the case. Yes, I think that there's a very, very small balance on South Norwalk. There are notes outstanding, but those notes only represent state retainage, right, for the project, and not the expectation is that the city wouldn't be bonding for that. They would be retiring the notes from grant receipts. So they're really like grant anticipation notes. But there is an amount, and I'd have to go to I'd have to open up another file and have it open in front of me for Norwalk High. But from memory, I believe that it's the city's piece, right? Because again, that was capped in Europe. Yeah, right. So I believe this next issuance should cover all of the city's share of that project.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll say, and just to add on to that, and we do have Alan Lowe on the line. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in terms of the state reimbursements, let's say we send a request for $10 million to the state on a monthly basis to cover all the costs. We're in a pretty good cadence right now with the state in terms of them sending back money and within a reasonable time frame. And what I would categorize as reasonable is 30 to 60 days, which is far better than it used to be. Am I on the right track there, Alan, with that statement?
Yes, we are submitting probably interim request for interim reimbursement probably every month and a half to 2 months. And it takes them about a month to respond. I think the more frequent we ask for it, it's actually quicker. The reason being is that it's not as complicated for them to review. So yes, I anticipate that in terms of cash flow wise, we will be doing very good.
Thank you.
I think the city share roughly is around, right now is around $51 million or something like that.
All right, so,
Bill, is Troy, real quick. Go back to that, the debt waterfall, please. Okay, so you're saying from you presented the new capital of 74 million, 87 million, 55 million. You're saying as a conservative approach, you took the full number into consideration for that year, but you're saying that traditionally we'll look at the 87 million. We wouldn't really take the full 87 in that year. There is a lag of what? How many years maybe?
well, it's gonna depend, it depends on the project. I mean, I think it's at least 2 to 3 years. I mean, I'll go back here for a moment and look at, so this is what the current authorized burn issue balances are. So,
Right.
I mean, they're out, going back to 23, there's still 12 million left on that. There's, so, and there's smaller balances that go all the way back, to 13. So, but significantly, over $1 million back to 18. So there's going to be a 3 to 4 year lag to really, to be honest, to get through all those, to get through all that balance. And so, that's not unusual, to be honest, for a capital plan of this size. It just doesn't, we rarely see it all be expended in 1 year.
And then even with the conservative approach, if you go back to that waterfall slide, you're saying that we would break through the 650. Is that 2 years from now in 28, right? 3 years maybe?
3 years, yeah.
Right. And I noticed that capacity number seems to keep rising periodically, right? Also, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, so here's the thing. So we had, Tom, Jared, and I had this conversation earlier today. Unfortunately, it's not indexed to like inflation. Again, Moody's methodology doesn't allow, didn't account for that, or does not include that the indexing in any way. So, unfortunately, that's a concern. What happens is as you're, and I'm going to talk about this in the conclusions, as those other metrics that I mentioned that were, say, weaker improve, then the capacity should go up. But the opposite is true. If those other metrics were to weaken, then the capacity may come down. So, I'm leaving it static because, again, based on where the city is now, certainly based on the August conversation with Moody's, and then projecting that forward, walking that forward, if you will, using the June 24 audit. I don't see that number changing materially. But that's really what it is the other considerations, and that's why I brought up the other metrics. Are really
So you're showing it flat, but you're saying a possibility it could also go down. Also, the capacity.
It could. Again, the city's practice has been conservative budgeting in the past, and that has led to consistent operating performance and surpluses and a growing fund balance. So I don't have any reason to expect that's going to change. But again, if it were to change, that would put pressure on the rating.
And I didn't see yet, or maybe you're going to present it, but I know that there's a ratio of the 16% for the fund balance. Is that S&P or Moody's, or is that in your graph here?
So if we go back a sec, again, we go to Standard & Poor's. So here for Standard & Poor's, right, reserves and liquidity, and the purple column, they have available reserves. So here, Standard & Poor's only is measuring the general fund, and their metric is anything over 15% would be AAA. So the city scores AAA under that metric. But unfortunately, there's a bit of a divergence in how the two rating agencies are measuring this. Standard & Poor's is only focused on the general fund. Moody's is focusing on all governmental funds, including the enterprise fund and internal service fund. So the 15% kind of, that rule of thumb is really the Standard and Poor's metric. And I didn't focus on that here because that's not, the city's well above that measurement as it relates to, their rating methodology. So that wasn't to me the one that's going to be the limiting factor.
So it's fair to say that the 15% we're at now in the fund balance ratio, we're right at the number right now. So we really can't be much more aggressive with our fund balance unless we're putting things in jeopardy. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Yes.
Thank you.
But that does provide a good segue to my last slide, in terms of conclusions here, is that, historically speaking, the city's, economic engine, its redevelopment efforts and its financial stability have been the underpinnings of its AAA rating. In addition to that, the work that this board has done to help to ensure that the pension and OPEB is funded appropriately and well funded are also strengths, and that is allowing debt capacity to be higher than it may otherwise would have been. But as those other financial measures or credit measures, I should say, if they were to weaken, then that would have a negative effect on that threshold. But the opposite is true. As those metrics improve, then the threshold could potentially go up. So I bring that up to highlight the interplay that exists, but in the credit rating methodology between, finances, pension, OPEB, and debt. It's not just a debt metric. Even though we think of it as a debt rating, there are other important factors that need to be considered, and finances is at 30% one of the biggest. So that's what I'd put together. I know we've had questions as we've gone through the presentation. I didn't know if there were any other from the board.
Ann? Ann, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you, Bill. This has been very helpful. I think I understand better now when you say that the rating agencies rely upon our real estate base. If we are sort of 1.5 times in terms of our full capital per capita, so they realize that should we need more money, we could raise taxes. The other part, as an observation, I would just like to make is that should there be any issues, at least relative to capital, it's something that is potentially more controllable in that we can decide to delay projects. So that 87 could conceivably be a lower number, which pushes us further out in terms of reaching that 650 cap. So there's more elements under our control.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that. And the 5-year plan is, how do I categorize this? Pretty fluid and dynamic. You've seen things like the Broad River project that was out 3 years, a couple of years ago. Now it was in 1 year. And then there are a variety of different projects that come and go based on, grant funding or whatever's going on in a specific department. So those numbers can fluctuate pretty dramatically.
But I would say one thing relative to the final discussion and Troy's question is I think we're sort of at the bottom in terms of us being able to tap into our fund balance to make up for any budgetary issues going forward.
Agreed. That's very clear in this presentation.
Just one more thing, Bill, before you go, do you mind hanging on just for the bond resolution discussion and vote in case anything comes up that you might be able to answer?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All
Uh,
right, so-
And any additional questions for Bill?
Yeah, one more question, and you just brought up, I mean, how are we, I'm just thinking out loud here, how are we gonna postpone finishing the high school? I mean, that's 87, that's one of the largest pieces. You can't push that off for 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's in the process. Am I missing something there? That money's gonna have to be spent no matter what.
right, but
I-
that's, if I may, so that 87 is future projects. That's not, the high school was already authorized. So your piece has already been approved. It's mostly been financed. There's a balance to be financed. But I think that the idea about pushing out that certain projects within that 87 million are future projects.
Okay,
prospective
okay.
projects. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That makes me feel a lot better. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any final comments for Bill? Bill, thank you very much. Very useful information. Obviously, you know, the caution and care that we need to take is obvious from the presentation. But it also is a little bit heartening to know that we're on an okay path. We need to be careful. We cannot be exorbitant with anything we do, but we're on a path that looks like it is appropriate for where we are. I echo Ann and Troy's point that the fund balance and conversations that occasionally happen about tapping into more of that is clearly not an option if we want to maintain our rating. So thank you very much. Tom, I believe the next item now is the resolution on the capital budget. May I get that moved for discussion, please? Thank you, Artie. Madam Clerk, may I get you to read that resolution into the record, please?
Resolution making appropriations for various public improvements aggregating 74,522,646 for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026, capital budget, and authorizing the issuance of 74,522,646 general obligation bonds of the city to meet certain appropriations in the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 capital budget.
Thank you. Any discussion on this particular item?
And if I may, just to remind everybody, this is the vote on the final total capital appropriations. It does not necessarily mean that we're going out to market for 74.5 million. That's contingent on how those cash flows come back and the project estimates. And this is a fair amount of legal language that has been vetted by our not corporation counsel, our bond counsel, Shipman Goodwin, and Bill has already also given this a look over. So this is vetted by everybody we have gone out to,
And I'll
Good.
further acknowledge that this is above the recommendation that we as a BET made, however, is in line with what the Common Council ultimately recommended and approved. Now, comments from any member? Ann?
I will stick with our original recommendation, given that the historical spending for the city and the Board of Ed has been at the $35 million level historically, and this budget is clearly $20 million more than what we had spent last year. Last year we had spent 35.8 million, and this year we're looking to spend 54.8, close relative to the numbers that we've had. And I would maintain that in the last 6 months, since when all these budgets were put together, the economy and the world looks very, very different. And I think that our original vote, looking for prudence in just keeping the capital budget flat, year over year, is warranted. So I will stick by that recommendation.
Thank you, Anne. I will just, as it's been made clear to me, and I will look for validation again. This is a binary vote here. This is a yes, no vote on this resolution. We do not have the flexibility to change the numbers within it.
I understand. I am only indicating an opinion relative to the fiscal veracity for the city.
Fair, just given some of the early confusion caused by me and some statements that I incorrectly made on capital budget caps, I want to be very clear on our role here is very binary on the resolution. Other comments from other board members?
Ed Destroy. Yeah, I have to say that also that I thought our recommendation was a strong recommendation to the Common Council for a reduction, and I can't say that I'm comfortable with this number, so.
Any other comments? All right, then I am going to call for a vote. All in favor of approving the resolution as presented to us, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The resolution passes 4-2. If it needs to be stated orally for the record, Ms. Yang and Mr. Jelleret opposed, Mr. Kasimis, Constant, Mayor Rilling and I approved. All right. Thank you very much for that. Next topic on our agenda is the approval of the FY 25-26 operating budget and tax rates. May I get that item moved for discussion and vote, please? Thank you, Artie. Tom, I believe this starts on page 31 of our package.
Yeah, starts in, ends on page 31. This is the final summary of the operating budget for fiscal 26. This is what went into the paper. So all the residents have seen it. It's also available online and has been for quite some time. And also, Bill Lindsay, you're free to drop at this point. You don't have to, but you're welcome to. But anyway, it reflects our total operating budget of 450,471,977. Below that on the document are the corresponding mill rates that equates to. You'll note that these are reflective of a couple significant changes, primarily mandated by the state, and that is on the motor vehicle mill rate. Last year was 32.46, I believe. And what came out of state legislation is that car taxes or motor vehicles, the mill rate had to be equal to or less than the lowest district real estate rate. So the lowest district real estate rate is in the 6th district, Rowayton, which is 22.3924. So we set the motor vehicle rate at 22 to be below that. And other than that, personal property went up about 4 points from 28 to 32. Recall that personal property is somewhat of a misnomer. It's actually business property. So think of Stu Leonard's and their shelving or their coolers, or King Industries, the chemical manufacturer, and all of their tanks and piping and so on and so forth. So that's what's covered by this. So these are, the mill rates actually came down just a little bit, but they are extremely close to what our predictions were in May of 24 when we first implemented the phase-in. So it's very, very close to what we had estimated. And again, this is year 2 of the 4-year phase-in. So any questions? Happy to attempt to answer them. But again, this is authorization to go forward with this as the final step in the operating budget process. Assuming these do get approved, they go over to Lisa Biagirelli's department and out go the tax bills.
Yeah, Tom, real quick, I don't see the percentages of the each district, like percent. I'm missing something here. This year 2, the phase-in is like 14%. You know what I mean? Those numbers.
Yeah.
Usually it's in this graph.
I have that. I can tell you what the ranges are, and then forward this on to you afterwards. So it is a low of 8.6% in District 5, and we're talking about the change in the median change in the median tax bill. 8.61 is the low in District 5. The high is District 2, which is 14.93%. Overall, in terms of dollar wise, it's a low of $710 increase in District 4, a high of $2,074 in District 6.
And you will get us those numbers.
Yeah, I'll send it. It's a one pager that summarizes everything, and it actually compares to what our projections were last year when we started the phase in.
Tom, could we also have an update in the budget book of page 7, which takes us all through the appropriations down to the net tax levy and what that net tax levy increases, because that will account for changes in revenue.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll send that out with the mill rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I have a couple of comments, as usual. One, I'd like to note that this budget that we're looking at is exactly $10,000 less than when we started within our whole due diligence process of going through all of the budgets. And I think we had a number of things that could have been implemented potentially to reduce the tax burden to the taxpayer, but were decided not to vote upon. The other point, again, as I've said before, this budget was formulated 6, 7, 8 months ago when the world and the economic environment is very different. I think that this budget this year is perhaps less conservative than the previous year, in that this year we were adding headcount, we're putting things back in that we had postponed last year. And from all the headlines that I'm reading and talking to companies, it is across the board hiring freezes, people are looking at reductions, and it's not clear to me that this current budget reflects some of our new economic realities. And so I would hope that the mayor and Mr. Schmidt, as we go along, perhaps are able to make adjustments to this budget in thinking about headcount and expenditures that more realistically reflect the current economic situation, which I think is difficult, where most people see that we're going to be heading into a recession. So I just think that we need to have perhaps built in some greater flexibility for us and potentially to use less of the fund balance than we are.
Well noted, thank you. Other comments? I will say, Ann, while I echo your cautions and asks for looking at our actual spend as carefully as we can as we go forward, given the way the world seems to be changing every minute of every day. That's a very good caution. I will remind us, though, we did as a board vote on a number of line item changes, and as a board, we, after detailed discussion, kept things where they were. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it going forward, but they were discussed, they were debated, as were the minimal onboarding and hiring that we're making. It does not preclude us from wanting to continue to be showing fiscal restraint. But again, at a 2.5% increase on the city side, I think a lot of that was planned into the budget. So agreed, fiscal restraint and looking continually at ways to reduce expense, given the world we live in at the moment, is a criticality at the city level and at the individual level. And I trust the mayor and Jared and Tom to continue to provide the due diligence that they have. Any final comments here before I ask for a vote on this? Therefore, all in favor of approving the FY26 operating budget and tax rates signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The budget is approved. All right. Next in our package, and I need to find the page, is page 32, a special capital appropriation in the amount of $583,668 for the building management department to cover increased construction cost on the Norwalk Community Center. May I get someone to move this item for discussion, please? Thank you, Artie. All right, Alan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening again. This request is for the Norwalk Community Recreation Center. We started this project earlier this year in terms of demolition or modification, demolition of the interior of the building, and started site construction of a new gym in the back. It is a recreation center. It's at 98 South Main Street, and the project is funded about $15 million. About 2/3 of it is coming from state and federal dollars as well as ARPA money. The city contribution to the project right now is about $5 million. So financially, that's how the budget is broken up. The project is started, I think it's February this year, again, a couple months ago, and it's scheduled to be completed by February of next year. So it's about construction is about 12 to 13 months. So at this point, we had to do the interior demolition, and the interior is all gutted. And one of the problems we find that we didn't expect was that the exterior wall of the building had water penetration around the entire building. What happens, the brick masonry on the outside, for whatever reason when it's built, the vertical joint on the bricks are not fully cemented together. So if I have a full report as part of the agenda, I believe it's an agenda, to show pictures and all that. From the exterior, we're looking at a building brick, it looks perfectly good condition. There's nothing need to be done. But when we rip out the interior of the walls to re-insulate the building, the exterior wall, we found mold, and we found fully deteriorated sheeting, which is some type of similar to, it's kind of strange. It's similar to like drywall for exterior sheeting, so which is very unusual. And for the last 1983, that's almost 40 years, moisture had been going through into the building, and it actually deteriorated even the metal studs in it. So there's some picture of those metal studs. It's completely rotted. And the other problem is with exterior brick wall, there's called a masonry tie that ties the brick onto the structural portion of the building. And traditionally, those are usually galvanized, and even though galvanized, they do deteriorate. So nowadays, we use stainless steel as the material to tie the brick onto the structural facade structural component of the building. So as you can see the pictures and all, we found this condition. We had to redo it. We had to repoint all the exterior wall all around the building. We're going to demolish the east wall, which is facing Ryan Park. We had to demolish that side of the wall. And we also had to go through, remove all the sheeting. And we're going to put spray foam insulation as well as new ties, stainless steel tie to the building. So the total amount that we got negotiated with different contractor, it came out about $500,000 plus additional for design services and market everything. So the total is about $580,000. There we have right now about $400,000 contingency, but what I'm requesting is the full amount of this issue, so that we keep the contingency whole, so that we can go for the rest of the project. And I am expecting contingency are set aside for this kind of issue, but it's typically never this size of a problem. So I anticipate that as we go forward, this is the challenge. It's usually you use the contingency during the demolition phase when you find unknown conditions. So I'm expecting that the contingency will hold a lot better, because this is like if we do allocate money for these corrective measures, I think our contingency is more than enough to cover the rest of the project. Because those unknowns are known by now. So that's the request in front of you. Subject to the BET's approval, we'll go through Planning and Zoning Commission and then Finance Committee of Common Council, and then for the full Common Council for approval.
And Alan, if I read my package of information correctly, while this is an incremental capital appropriation for this specific project, there's an offset of the same amount for the middle school bathroom project, so that's a net zero expense to the city. It's moving from one project to the next. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Other questions for Alan on this?
Quick question, Ed. Alan, what was the this happened with the Cranberry School too? I'm noticing. What was the amount of this middle school bathroom project? What was the total dollar amount of that project?
The board, I didn't make the original request. It actually came from Board of Education. It was $1.5 million.
It was originally 1.5.
Yes, and we spent $800,000.
And you had the project is complete, and you have $538,000. It was bid over that. Is that what you're saying? How is that possible to be that way over on a project? I mean, you're telling me 1.5 million was the estimate of the cost of that job, and now we have 538,000 as remaining.
I just want to say I did not make that request for original funding. Board of Ed submitted funding for $1.5 million. So after Board of Ed requested the money, the project came to me to implement. So there's 4 elementary and 4 middle school in the system. Polnus was done when we did the Polnus renovation projects. I went to visit Wayne School, Nathan Hale, and West Rocks. And we are, it's complicated conversation. So we look at improvement of those bathroom. All these bathroom, a lot of the bathroom need to be repaired. So what we did was, instead of for Nathan Hale and for West Rock School, we did not completely gut the interior of the bathrooms. We did improvements more than just a facelift. We did improvement that's good for at least 8 to 10 years, because we are looking at a 25-year plan for those schools, and we haven't developed it yet with Board of Education, but we're looking to do major renovation in the future. So but at the same time, it's not happening a year or 2 years from now. It's multiple years away. But at the same time, instead of gutting the whole bathroom, we change all the plumbing fixtures. We do, again, something more than a facelift. We did improvement that good enough to last 8 to 10 years. That's why I think the cost is a little less than what was anticipated. I didn't want to spend money to renovate a bathroom and had to tear it out, in 8, 10 years from now. So the improvement, it's very nice, but it's not fully gutted. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. I'm just a little. I just feel concerned because, like, with Cranberry, we did the same thing, and everyone says, "Oh, it's an offset, it's an overage. Let's just move it over to this other project." I'm just saying, I just think that
You don't mean Cranberry? Cranberry built a whole new school.
I believe, Troy, that Alan's being very polite here, but what this calls into question is some of the same things that the public has raised regarding transparency inside the Board of Education budget, the level of detail and information that they provide, the collaboration between the city and the board to get to a level of expense that's realistic. I mean, if Alan's team felt that we could do these bathrooms for significantly less, that should have been a conversation that happened up front, not on the back end. And I would turn to the mayor, I would turn to Jared, I would turn to Dr. Estrella to again, become more transparent and more collaborative in this work so that we don't find ourselves budgeting a project for 1.5 million that can be done for $500,000.
yeah, and that's taxpayer money.
Try and defend it.
And we're billing taxpayers for that. And when it's, we're trying to save money everywhere we can. Okay, I just Just,
Yep.
yeah, it's, okay.
Any other comments or questions on this appropriation? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the appropriation as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it is approved. Thank you very much, Alan,
Thank you.
and thank you for being polite. Tom, I believe the next item on our agenda is the contingency tracker.
Yeah, so just a refresher, we started the year with 2.6 million. Based on the approvals at the April 7th meeting, that was $65,000 from contingency for the office and conference room renovations that Tom Livingston had asked for the Chief of Staff Department, as well as PMP and other areas in economic and community development. That 65,000 brings us now down to 2.1 million. And then with the 40 and change that we just approved for Deanna, that'll bring us down to about 2,040,000 for the year. So still in good shape. And I believe the mayor is still on. If Mayor, anything we would like to add in terms of the labor negotiations?
Well, hold on. Yes, we're making good progress. We have 5 bargaining units that we're currently bargaining with. And 2 are very close, probably going to come to a ratification vote within the next week or 2. Then they'll be put onto the council for final approval. The other 3 are also relatively close. I'm not sure how close they are to ratification, but obviously until everything is ratified by the union and then brought to the council, we don't normally talk about individual number. We don't talk about numbers. What we are trying to do is, because it was very challenging this year with all the bargaining unit contracts expiring, we are going to issue out contracts, the length of which will end up staggering some of them rather than have all 5 each year. So I think that's something that will give a little bit more breathing room and preparation room.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions, comments on contingency? All right, seeing none, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the FY 25-26 suspense tax list. Can I get that moved for discussion? Thank you, Artie. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay. This is an annual process that we bring to the board. The board has oversight on taxes that my office deems uncollectible, usually for the reasons that we either do not have a valid mailing address for a motor vehicle bill, or the business that we issued a business personal property tax for is out of business. And there are some items that are carried forward from one year to the next on the grand list by the assessor's office, even after the business has closed. It's particularly challenging because the assessment date is October 1st. The taxes don't come due until the following July, and then the January after that. And sometimes businesses can come and go in that amount of time. There is no procedure to prorate a business personal property bill. So if a company is in business on October 1st and they're not in business on October 2nd, we still carry a bill for a full year. That's kind of like a flaw in Connecticut law, but that's our situation. So every year around this time of year, I come to you. And the reason why we put items in suspense is to allow me to not try to continue billing them by sending mailings to them. We're trying to conserve our resources, and if we know that those addresses are not valid or that the company is not there any longer, we don't want to have to bill it. It doesn't mean that we can't still collect it. And what we do with our motor vehicle accounts is we turn them over to a third-party collection agency, and we do collect a significant amount of revenue when individuals, sometimes they've moved out of state, they come back, they try to register a motor vehicle, taxes are collectible for 15 years. And we are able to capture some of that revenue through the collection agency or when they come back to Connecticut. The business personal property is a little harder. We don't do as well with that, but the majority of these bills that we are turning over, the pages and pages of that report, it is mostly motor vehicle bills. And I did give you a couple of totals in that report. It's about what it usually is. It's an efficiency measure for us. Like I said, with the motor vehicle, it doesn't mean that we're completely giving up. It basically means that we don't consider it an active asset. We don't want to overstate what our potential revenues may be. So it's a good thing to do, but we do need your oversight to allow us to do it. We don't make the transfer until we have your approval. The auditors also review it. So this is the first step in that oversight level. And I gave you the summary. The first 2 pages were the summary, and then the pages and pages after that are all the details. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Lisa? Seeing none, all
That's a
the,
question. I think her hand is up.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Ann. I apologize.
Oh, you're muted.
In the years past, have we had bill collection agencies trying to collect on these expense accounts? And has the success rate been about the same, or has it improved with different vendors?
It's improved. We have had a collection agency probably for the last 20 years. We have a new one. We went out to bid, I want to say probably 4 years ago, and we changed agencies. And the current agency that we have is good. And in my monthly report, I think I even talk about that. I can jump ahead a little bit, but every month I usually give you an update. Let me find it. If I put it in this month's report or not. Yes, our third-party collection agency collected through March 2025, 1.3 million in past due motor vehicle taxes, and that was since 2022. That with that new agency. And the way that they work, they're a little bit different than the plate finder situation, because state law allows us to pass the fee along to the taxpayer. So they do charge a fee, but we pass that fee on to the taxpayer. The city does not lose any revenue with this.
I would just like to comment that based on a budget of 450 million, and we have essentially 700,000 of uncollectibles relative to any other sort of business and retail or what have you, that's a pretty darn good rate. So thank you for your good work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the suspense list signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's approved, Lisa.
Thank you. And I'm still on your agenda for later, so I'll still be on your meeting.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. Next on our agenda, though, is an update on the on the Norwalk School construction. That, for those following along at home, jumps us all the way to page 160 in our package. So, Alan, do you want to talk about where we are on that, please?
Yeah, I see Alan is still on the line. If you want to give us a quick overview, I know I
Just
started
very quickly.
here with the state reimbursements, but go ahead.
We do this, our division, we provide this monthly update to the city side, to the Common Council every month, and we have becomes one part of our regular procedure to submit it to the BET for your general information. So South North School is moving very expeditiously. We are scheduled to complete the project and open for the fall semester. So we started this project a year ago. So it's been about a year or so. So I think altogether it was 16 months for start to finish. We are within the budget, so everything's doing well. And we provided a tour for the Common Council member and board members about a month and a half ago. And I understand that the BET would like to tour it. It's fun actually. It's not, it's not really like PR thing. It's really for those that are interested in what we're doing. I mean, South North School is it's the biggest elementary school in our system. It's going to be for 682 kids, I believe. And it's a South North school that this community never had for a neighborhood school for South Norwalk. So it is very important for the community. So I guess Ed, you're working with Joanne, my office, to schedule something. Let us know, and we'll make it work. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We anticipate some residual fund at the end of the project, but we'll know as soon as we get through the next couple of months to see what's residual, because we have contingency set aside and stuff like that. So we see what those numbers come out to be. North High is moving along quite well as well. We are on schedule, and we actually went out to bid for demolition of the existing building. We anticipate that we'll finish the building for the fall 2027 semester. The kids will move in a new building, and that's when we start doing the demolition of the parking lot and the existing building. So we didn't bid it out a year ago because it's too far away, but we bid it out recently for the demolition of the existing building. We will approach the state to get the balance of the funding necessary for the demolition of the building and some other miscellaneous, I think, including furniture and things like that. So I'm working on that. It's about another $10 million that we will approach the state for. Again, it's moving along very well. I mean, you see the crane that we should be finishing the steel erection by July of this year, and moving forward. The other project I want to update you a little bit on is the school HVAC air conditioning heating project. HVAC heating, ventilation, air conditioning project. We went out to bid recently. The bids came in very high, so we're working to resolve those issues. It's too early to explain where we are and what the financial challenges are. But again, my role is to find the most effective method to implement the project financially as well as time-wise. So these bids came in high. It's a very interesting time in terms of construction in Fairfield County, especially it's very focused on mechanical, because the state came out this money to do a mechanical HVAC project, and it's generally speaking, the industry is tapped out in Connecticut in terms of, so we are not getting a lot of competition in bidding. That's one of the challenges, and also supplier is also another problem. So anyway, we are facing these challenges, but it is my responsibility to try to figure out how best to put as many of these projects together as possible. So I anticipate that I will have some recommendation to the city as well as to the BET, because at some point I think some additional money would be necessary. So again, I will manage that to the extent we can, and I will give some recommendation to everybody, and then the city and the BET probably next month. These projects are not small. Altogether, it's like $35 million. And but then you're talking mechanical system improvement for $6 million. We cannot do it in 1 year. There's also abatement that needs to be done. So we are trying to split out. We do remediation this summer, and then we order the equipment. Equipment takes at least 4 months to order. So there could be a second shift work. And also we got to take into next summer to do the installation. So there's a lot of phasing and strategy you need to look at, and how it impact the students. We want to minimize the impact on the school operations and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different factors to consider. So I just want to leave you with that. It is a lot of work in front of us to figure this out. So that's where we are, and I'm updating Common Council as well as the Board of Education members on where we are on these projects. There's a total of 6 projects. Brookside School actually moving along. We actually started construction this summer, and then wherever we don't finish, we work on weekends in the fall to do them. The other 5 projects are Ryan McMahon, Silver Mine, we're waiting, Naomic, and Marvin School. Thank you.
Anne, I believe you have a question.
Yes, Alan, how much flexibility do we have in terms of delaying any of the projects within the school, within the state grants? It has to be spent by X period of time.
When the grant was issued last May, which is about a year ago, the completion date is actually December 2025, which ends this year. I have requested extension of 1 year already to December 2026. The schedule they present is never going to work because, we only our construction period is only the summer. Summer is not like 2 months or 2.5 months. It's actually around 7 weeks. The teachers comes back, in the like middle, like August 21st or so like that, and kids come back the week after. So it's very limited construction period. And then you can't really do like $6 million worth of mechanical work in one summer. It's not enough time, So it is 2 years. So the way the state set up these completion deadline is not very realistic. But so again, I request extension to next year already. I am working. In fact, we are meeting almost every day on this to figure out how we it can also complicated too. Like 2 schools, Rowan School and Silvermine are getting boilers. So we actually expedited the process by actually bought the boilers directly already. So that we don't wait for the contractor to bid on it. So that we can order like a few weeks ago. So we anticipate deliver a boiler by end of June, so that we can go for this summer, get it installed before the heating season starts. So we are trying to find ways to cut costs because we buy direct, we limit a little bit of the middleman. But at the same time, it's that in order to expedite it, we get the boiler order. Meanwhile, we go through the time to bid out the construction, the labor side of it. So there's a lot of thinking behind it. But again, still, we are facing these financial challenges ahead of us. So anyway.
I only say that because if you have that flexibility, you might find 6 months or 12 months from now that the market is more stable and perhaps there are less shortages. I might be absolutely wrong, but I understand that there is a real shortage in the markets now. So if we can sort of wait for our pitch to some extent, and if the state can give us flexibility, I think that can be helpful. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Alan? Alan, thank you very much. I believe, Tom, that the last speaking item on our agenda is the tax collector's report. In our package is the monthly Oak Hills update and some others, but the Oak Hills Authority is not scheduled to speak this month. I believe it's just Lisa at this point. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, you are correct. Lisa will be off next month and Alan will be on for Oak Hills. Alan Dutton, not Alan Lowe.
Right. All right, Lisa, the floor is once again yours.
Thank you. We had our report done for March. We have not yet done our report for the end of April, but through the end of March, so through the first quarter, we were at 97.65% of our levy, which is right where we want it to be. A little bit up from February when we were at 97.07. For the fiscal year, we were at 6.5 million collected in past due taxes. That's net of credits and refunds. We're still working on that cannabis tax, and we're up to 257,000 since April of last year on that. We, as I mentioned, when Yang had asked the question about the collection agency, we give you the figures on that every month as well, 1.3 million in suspended motor vehicle accounts. With regard to the tax sale, since the last time I spoke with you, we had a tax sale in September of 2024. The redemption period for that tax sale expired in mid-March, and there were 4 properties that were not redeemed that were deeded over to the successful bidders. And we filed those deeds in March, and we also had to turn over to the Superior Court the overbid on those properties, which was in excess of $800,000. And interestingly, Connecticut is a state where, by state law, as an automatic part of the process, the municipality is not entitled to keep the overbid. There are a number of challenges that are happening now in courts and jurisdictions elsewhere in the country where this is not the case, and taxpayers are bringing actions against the municipalities basically for unjust enrichment because the municipalities are keeping these excess funds because there is no statutory provision to provide them to the person who has lost their property or another lien holder. And other states, including like New Jersey and some other places, are kind of in an uproar over this, but in Connecticut, we're not because we've been doing it all along. So that's just an interesting tidbit about Connecticut law. We did issue delinquent notices for real estate and business personal property in March. We filed our liens in April, on April 2nd. Motor vehicle delinquent notices went out last week. So we're working on that now. And you did approve the rates for our June billing. So we will start, we've actually sort of already started working on that. And relative to that, I need to request that each of the members of the board come to City Hall to sign the rate bills, because I need to have that permanent record of the vote that you took on setting those rates this evening. So I think the easiest thing to do would probably be to leave them in the budget office. I will leave 2 copies up there so that they're in a central place. The mayor has to sign it, of course, because he is a member of the board. And also each of the voting members of the board need to sign those to allow me to collect.
Is there a date by which you need signatures, Lisa, just so we're not delinquent and showing up at City Hall?
I would say before I issue any bills. So you've got probably till the second week of June, but I kind of like to get it done so that I have it.
Got it. So the second week of May for all of us is when we need to have it done.
Well, I'm gonna have my warrant signed by a JP tomorrow. So yeah, the sooner the
Okay.
better, because we could just cross it off the list.
Okay.
Lisa, does Ed Camacho is not here. Does he still need to sign even though he didn't vote?
He does.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I'll let
right.
him know. I'll let everybody know. I'll send an email, a little reminder out. And I'm glad to answer, as usual, answer any questions that you have. We're looking forward to trying to get the billing underway a little bit earlier this year. We do have some challenges with the motor vehicle situation, but I think we have it pretty well in hand. So that's what's next on the agenda for us.
Very good. Thank you. Questions for Lisa? Lisa, thank you for the update, the very thorough report, and the diligence and the work you and your team do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
With that, Tom, are we at the end of our agenda?
We are.
Any closing remarks, reminders from you or the mayor before I move to adjourn?
No, just next one will be early in Monday, June 2nd will be our next meeting. So no, that's it for me.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, closing remarks from you.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for serving on the BET. I know it's challenging, especially this time of the year when we have lots of meetings and lots of figures and facts. And certainly want to thank Tom and Jared and Lisa Biagirelli, the finance team, if you will, for the work that they do. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. With that, may I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Artie. We are adjourned. Have a nice evening, everybody. We'll speak again next month.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good night.